We've also
Yes.
got one more guest joining us, Dr. Sreeram Chaulia, who is the Vice Dean of Jindal School of International Affairs as well, for a quick perspective right here. Sir, thanks and appreciate you joining us as well. And as Mr. Sen was mentioning earlier, there is going to be a resetting of ties between India and Nepal as well. And your first up reaction, Nepal is entering a new area of consolidating gains of democracy and achieving economic growth as well and development. And India is now trying to send out a strong message of remaining a steadfast partner to Nepal. How do you view this?
Yes, I think it's remarkable that among all the South Asian countries, Prime Minister Modi has chosen Nepal for his record third visit during his first term. And there are a couple of reasons for that. First, we are apprehensive about a potential Chinese encroachment across the high Himalayas, closer and closer to our border. And I think the Nepalese have often tried to play off India against China and extract benefits from both sides. So that has been a matter of concern for us. And I think we have shown, we have put our money where the mouth is. For example, in this year, financial year, India has expanded foreign aid to Nepal by 74%. This is the highest increase in terms of our development assistance. And you will see some of that during this visit. For example, the Arun hydroelectric project that's being inaugurated, the waterways connections, inland waterways, to build the connectivity. There's, of course, the Raxaul-Kathmandu railway that they have agreed to survey and to take forward. So there are a variety of initiatives in terms of developmental diplomacy. And then there is a cultural side. I think the Prime Minister is absolutely spot on in exploiting this, because among all our neighbors, Nepal is a unique country in terms of its demography. It's a majority Hindu country. So for us to be present in their important places of worship in the form of Prime Minister going there makes a huge difference in terms of winning back the hearts and minds which had temporarily been lost in 2015. And I think the fact that the communists, the Maoists, as well as the Madhesi parties and the Nepalese Congress, these are the four forces in Nepal, all of them are welcoming Prime Minister back to Nepal this time. So it shows that we have in many ways covered some ground and made up for the losses that were incurred during the so-called blockade of 2015. I want to just add here that, anti-India sentiment is often exploited and whipped up by one or the other of these mainstream parties, especially the hill elites in Nepal, in order to consolidate their position against their rivals. So to some extent, this is actually a product of the jockeying and the politicking that goes on internally in Nepal, and has been a lot of instability in the past few years with so many prime ministers changing. But now I think KP Oli is in his second term. And earlier he had adopted a kind of a strident anti-India position, but he has learned his lessons and he's now looking to build closer ties with Nepal because
that's a very interesting point. That's a very interesting point. Hold on to that
because he is from the communist side and he wants to tell the Maoists, who are his coalition partners, who are usually seen as pro-China, that look, we cannot ignore India. And I think that's the wholesome picture. And Prime Minister is arriving at the right time to consolidate the gains slowly.
That's a very, very interesting point that you've brought up, Dr. Sreeram. Mr. Chaulia, you heard out Zaka, you heard out Mr. Sen as well. How do you find this visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi strategic in the overall geopolitical scheme of things?
Well, it's very strategic because we have shown that we are paying highest level political attention to this small country, which in the past felt slighted and neglected. If you recall the 2015 unfortunate incidents of that year, there was a sense of, hurt on the part of the Nepalese elites that we were, dispatching the foreign secretary and nobody higher than that to try and resolve the crisis over the Madhesi role. And it was also felt that somehow Modi was too busy at that time because of the Bihar elections and distracted. I think now what he has shown, I think Prime Minister he's very good at wooing small states and giving them this sense of faith and hope of a developmental partnership, the Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. And Nepal has been, on target because he is now initiating a lot of projects. Remember, Prime Minister Modi was the first one to say, let us revive the Mahakali project and the Pancheshwar Dam, which would make a huge difference for the Nepalese people. We are now inaugurating the Arun Dam. And I don't have to reiterate the fact that, the cultural diplomacy has always been good. He went to Pashupatinath. in 2014. Now today he's in Janakpur, then Muktinath tomorrow. I think all of this shows that we are indeed leveraging, as Zaka is saying, the unique Hindu connect. And the Ramayana circuit is really, really a good idea because, to create connectivity around the idea of culture is something the Chinese cannot do. The Chinese idea of connectivity is always, commerce and industry and enterprise and making money. And what we are saying is, in our own neighborhood, we have a unique strength over the Chinese, which is the cultural connection. So Sri Lanka, India, Myanmar, Nepal, all these are tied by the Ramayana circuit and also the Buddhist circuit. And I think Prime Minister is really leveraging this very well. He performs pujas in these temples. He goes to mosques in the UAE. He goes to gurudwaras in Vancouver in Canada. He goes to Buddhist monasteries in Japan. He does all these in order to keep the people connect, and so that it stays in people's minds and they appreciate it, because he's more than an ordinary head of government who's visiting and just doing deals with the VIPs. He's saying, I respect your local icons and your deities, and we are trying to connect them to Ayodhya, and that's how we will keep the tourist flow moving. Because remember, the Chinese are pouring in large numbers in terms of tourism. And the Nepalese elites will try to use that to bargain and to have leverage with India. And what Modi is saying is, we are number one. We have always been number one there, and we are determined to remain in that position.
Dr. Chaulia, do you see that, the Indian neighborhood diplomacy in Nepal was failing day by day, but there was massive hope when Narendra Modi became the Prime Minister of India, and people used to say that now India will improve its neighborhood diplomacy. You think the time has come now that the neighborhood diplomacy will see betterment in terms of ties, and this bilateral ties will work out for better with this particular visit, an historic one while at it, of Prime Minister Modi in Nepal?
I think we've got a broader regional vision, of which Nepal is a vital cog. Now we have the BBIN concept of the Prime Minister, Bhutan, Bangladesh, India and Nepal, especially engaging in energy trade between surplus countries and deficit countries. I think the Arun hydroelectric, for example, is going to make a huge difference because, one, the Nepalese are power starved themselves. Two, they want to rectify the trade imbalance with India. They've been saying for a long time it's very unequal, and it's only the Indians who are exporting products and we are not able to do enough in return. Now the integrated checkposts are being set up at the border, and we are fast forwarding those to facilitate more Nepalese exports into India. And secondly, we want to use the energy trade as a basis by which we can level out the trade deficit. Often the Nepalese claim, whenever for political expediency, that the relationship with India is based on unequal terms and that it is exploitative and that the Indians are being hegemonic. I think Prime Minister is trying to allay those concerns through at the highest level, and especially by reaching out to all the sides. You see, the most critical of India usually are the Maoists. And now they are in a coalition with KP Oli's Communist Party. So there are two left-wing parties, and I think they are playing it well. He's meeting Prachanda also. Prime Minister will meet Prachanda also on this trip. And of course, Sher Bahadur Doba, who is the leader of the Congress, Nepalese Congress, which is a centrist party, tends to be usually more pro-India on a principled basis. So I think we are covering the bases well. In some parts of our neighborhood, we have been seen as siding with one of the political forces. For example, in Sri Lanka, we are seen as against Mahinda Rajapaksa. For example, Bangladesh, we are seen as against Khalida Zia. In Maldives, we have lost it because the current administration thinks that we are totally against them. So I think we need to have what I call a multi-vectoral approach. And I think in Nepal, in a way, it's the litmus test for this. And to a great extent, Modi is succeeding. If you look at the 4 years or 5 years in comprehensive, eagle's eye view, you will find that 2015 is more going to be like a blip rather than the trend, because the trend is actually that Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas is being actualized and
all
is
right,
being
Mr.
realized.
Chaulia,